Hello there. Hello out there. My name's Wolfster, and welcome to the main theme of all the 18 episodes. Is the human race about to mature? Now, this episode, episode 3, is entitled The Equation of Everything. Now, first of all, what I'd like to do is start out by telling you why I've actually fitted this episode in here. What I was going to do, episode 3 originally was going to be episode 4. And episode 4 is about the purpose of life. But during the time when I was talking to people, sort of doing some market research on this, and talking to people about the purpose of life, and you need a purpose in life, I found something quite disturbing. And when I talk to people about your life really does need to have a purpose, I found quite a swell of people very, very negative to that idea. So many people, almost some with anger in their voice, said to me, "Oh no, there is no purpose to life. Life simply doesn't have a purpose." And I found like it was almost trying to convince them that yes, life does have to have a purpose. I found it's almost like, if you meet someone who's depressed and you say to them, "Oh yeah, cheer up." You can't say that to someone who's depressed. And trying to say that to someone and tell someone your life really doesn't need a purpose. Life is having a purpose in life is very important. People sort of reacted in a very negative way to it. It's like, no, there is no purpose to life. And so for that reason, I've decided to put this equation here, which is going to help you to understand why having a purpose in life is so important. And I'm doing this before I get to, I think it's episode 13, which is where I'm going to start talking about the origins of the universe. I'll probably use it there as well. But I've put this in here before I go to episode 4, which is about what actually is the purpose of life. Okay, now we think about the purpose of life, or the meaning of life, if you want to call it that. That, for most part, has been the realm of the theologians, basically religion. Now, my theory on this is because we are, as a race, growing up. We're not a childlike race anymore. We're actually in our adolescence, as I think I mentioned that in episode 1. We are actually an adolescent race now. And so many of the things that you would need to be as a child taught about, yes, we got mummy and daddy's hand to hold. As an adolescent, we are becoming much more independent, as both as an individual and as a race. So we're getting more and more independence. And so things of the past, the idea of a God that is watching over you, has a purpose for you. You don't have to have your own purpose. There's a purpose laid out for you. Everything's given to you. That now, because we are in our adolescence, that really doesn't gel anymore. And so what's happened? We've looked for something else to take its place, something more logical, something we can get our mind around. And so we've turned to science. We've turned to the different theories that science has brought up to us. And what is that? Well, The Big Bang theory. The Big Bang, what does that tell you about the purpose of life? It tells you there's no purpose to life because it's all just a big explosion. Actually, I like the idea of, because I follow more Nikola Tesla and Nikola Tesla's ideas. And do you want to know what Nikola Tesla actually said about the Big Bang? He likened it to a dictionary. Now, where did that dictionary come from? Well, there was a big explosion in a printing factory. And all the paper flew up in the air, and all the ink flew up in the air, and as it slowly flitted down, the ink fell on the paper, and then the binding materials all fell together, and by the time it hit the ground, here's a dictionary. Now, if you can believe that, actually, the universe is far, far more complicated than a dictionary. But I just like that about Nikola Tesla. I think he was a genius of his time. Sad that he didn't actually get more recognition for his work. He was actually promoted and financed by a guy called J.P. Morgan, which probably most of you have heard of. J.P. Morgan loved Nikola Tesla in the beginning, in the early days, because he gave us AC current. We wouldn't have AC current. We wouldn't have the networks that we've got now, and we wouldn't have our mobile phones without Nikola Tesla either. But Nikola Tesla also was working with free energy. And what was J.P. Morgan most interested in? What sort of money he could make. He invested in copper mines and in rubber plantations to give us wires. And then Nikola Tesla came up with the idea of free energy. No wires. So he got dumped. So I feel very sorry for him. Of course, though, what we know now about energy in the air, that might have had all kinds of repercussions with cancer, which we know is happening, but he didn't know that at the time, and neither did JP. So, what does all this tell us about the purpose of life? Well, if it's just a big explosion, there's no purpose to it, is there? And other things that have, other scientist theories that have come along as well is Darwin's evolution. So it's not just about we came from monkeys, but it's also that life came from some sort of primordial soup. Now, that has been debunked by mathematicians because they say that that's impossible. And what do we have after that? Well, we've had this idea of paleospermic theory, which is basically, I'll show you, I'll just put this up on the board. That's Mother Earth. And the idea of paleospermic is that life was actually on an asteroid. So if you imagine that as life, and there's your asteroid, and here's life on the asteroid, you can see it there, and it comes crashing into the Earth. Boom! So it goes through the atmosphere at a speed that would melt metal, crashes into the Earth somewhere, doesn't matter where, even if it was in the ocean, would hit with the force of an atomic bomb. And then somehow life just sort of wiggled off and wiggled off and gave us life on the Earth. Now, if you can believe that, that's, to me, that's crazy. And even if that was true, you've got to ask, how the hell did life get on the asteroid? I mean, if we can't think that life could develop on a planet that is perfectly conducive to life being there, how the hell did it get on the asteroid, the most improbable place that you could possibly imagine for life to be? So then they say, well, it must have come from somewhere else. So why didn't they say that in the first place? It must have come from somewhere else. And it doesn't answer the question, where did life come from? Does it? Where did life come from? They don't have a clue. And so we come back to all these theories. They suggest that life simply doesn't have a purpose. Now, they don't actually say that, but all these theories, that's the conclusion of it. Life doesn't have a purpose. And that is why, my dear friends, I feel that so many people that I spoke to seriously feel life doesn't have a purpose. And that is very, very disturbing to me. We need to feel like our life has a purpose. In fact, it's vital to our life that we feel it's got a purpose. Oh. Okay, this brings me now then to the equation, because I need to develop and to show you how life does have a purpose. So I've talked about why we often feel like it hasn't, but now I've got to help put something there that says that life does have a purpose. Now I'm going to bring you to my board here. Now here we have the equation that I'm wanting to put out there. The key ingredients is LEP, information and consciousness. So this actually isn't, I haven't even got to the point of the physical universe. This is where it all sparked, and the spark is in the spirit. As I mentioned in episode 1, we are actually made up of 4 bodies, and we are our spirit. We're not our body, we're not our mind, we're not our emotions. We are our spirit. And so this here is the spark of the spirit. And the equation is energy seeks purpose. When energy seeks purpose, it creates life. And life draws more energy, which then seeks greater purpose, which then creates a higher level of life. And that gives off information, which is encapsulated in consciousness. Does that make sense? I'll just go through it again. Energy seeks purpose. Energy seeking purpose is actually what life actually is. This is the spirit, which is what you, I, everything else alive actually is, including the earth and the stars. Everything is alive. And that continues, and the more purpose it gains, the greater the information, and that's encapsulated in consciousness. Now what this does, I'll just remove this here for a while. What that does is creates a spiral. So it starts here, and when it comes back, it has greater purpose. So it's found purpose, so it's a higher level, so it's a plus. And then it keeps going around, and each time it comes back, it's a higher level. It's more developed each time. And so eventually it keeps going around and around and around and around. You get the picture. I won't keep going. Now that is what actually has got science bamboozled, and that is inflation. They talk about inflation. This is actually what causes inflation. Energy finding purpose, creating greater, higher level of life, then creates more information, encapsulated in consciousness, and keeps going around. Now, if ever at any point, I'll take this point here, that the purpose falls apart, then it starts to go the other way, inwardly, and it gets smaller. That we call entropy. So here we've got growing is when it is gaining better, more and more purpose, more and more information, the encapsulation of consciousness. That expands, so inflation. If we get to a point where that comes to a halt, or even purpose is lost, then it goes back. And that is entropy. So coming back to here, we've got information and consciousness. Something I'm going to now take you back to what I said in episode 1 and a sheet that I used when I spoke about the spirit and that you are your spirit. The subconscious mind is part of your spirit. And that links with the spirit here, information, and this encapsulation of consciousness. So having a purpose in your life is so vital. The moment you lose purpose in your life, then you find your life goes backwards. We find this with people who have a lifelong career, and they put all their energy goes into developing a career, and then they get to the older age and they retire, and suddenly their purpose in life disappears. And don't we see that? Sometimes also bringing up children. I mean, that's a wonderful privilege, but we put all this effort into 20 years or so, bringing up our family, and then what do? They go off and make their own life, which is the purpose of them for their own purpose. But parents can then find themselves, well, their whole purpose was to bring up their children, and now their children are brought up and they leave the nest, and the parents now suddenly have no purpose. And so what I'm trying to make, the point that I'm trying to make is purpose in life is vital. And the purpose, the main purpose of your life, my life, and the life of the entire human race is to mature. Maturity, what do I mean by maturity? I'm not talking about physical maturity. I am talking about spiritual maturity. If you like, as I've said already, I don't like the idea of the word of evolution because of Darwin's connotations there, but the spirit evolves. And as we grow, develop, our spirit goes from the childlike state to the adolescent state, which our race mostly is in. Although, I will say something, there are right now many people here on this planet that are very spiritually evolved. Not everyone, we're all individuals. There's some here that are actually new souls. But there are actually many people here who are actually spiritually very, very close to that level of maturity. And that is the purpose of life, for us to mature. And so what we need to be doing and thinking about, I'll bring up something that I used in episode 1, and that was the other aspect of our spirit, which is our karma. I call it the cauldron of karma. And you remember, I haven't filled water in this time, but I used my cauldron of karma. So karma, we start off in our first incarnation with just a little bit, just because we are alive. And if we pour positive things in, then this fills up. But if we do negative actions, then that tap comes on and it comes out. So the purpose of life, of everyone's life, is to build up this karma. And remember what I said about karma? It is actually the energy. It is actually the engine of the vibration of your spirit. So the higher the karma comes up, the higher your spirit vibrates. Conversely, the lower it goes, the more dense, the lower your vibration is. Now, this does have some benefits to your life in this incarnation, because if you're vibrating high, then the law of attraction will mean you will attract other people who will also be vibrating at a high level. Conversely, if you're down here vibrating very lowly, then you will attract negative or lower vibrational, both people in your life and experiences. So there is great benefit in this life to get good karma. But it is the ultimate purpose in our life. But I don't want to get too much, because I'm going a bit into episode 4 now. But this is one of the big reasons, one of the big purposes, to get this higher level of karma. So now, something that I don't want to leave out here, that I've just noticed I've got in my notes, and the idea of everything being alive is actually not a new idea. It's been in all indigenous cultures, but it's also in philosophy. There's something called panpsychism. That's been around for possibly a couple of thousand, maybe even 3,000 years. But it's in philosophy, and believe you physicians, theoretical physics and philosophers, I know you don't get on very well. You don't get on very well, but seriously, you guys should get together once in a while, because you really could learn so much from each other. So yeah, panpsychism, everything is alive. And that comes back to my my chart here. So yeah, everything is alive. Remember, I'm saying this here is not the physical universe yet. It's the spark of life. If you like, you can call this the divine, if you want to call it. You can put labels on it. Some like to call it the spark of the divine. Others like to just call it the creative energy, the creator. Another very, very common term nowadays is just the universe. But this is what sparked it all, and everything is alive according to panpsychism. And there's a couple of things that I just want to add into here, like they're a bit of a tangent, I guess I'm going off onto. Yeah, the famous slit experiment, which they know that light and other forms of energy, as it's traveling through space, light goes in a wave, but when it's viewed, then it changes and it becomes a particle beam. Now, why is that? That's the big question on many people's lips. And the reason is light as well is also because it's generated from a star. It is a life form. And it is seeking, energy is seeking purpose. So as it's going through the universe in a wave, it's seeking purpose. Now, when it connects, which is what I've got here, going back to episode 1, a connection center. This is part of our spirit. When life and something else that is also has this spirit in it, when it's a connection, then a light then finds its purpose, in that it turns into a particle beam and it fulfills its purpose by illumination. That's the purpose of life, the purpose of light. So that answers that question. And I would also like to go to something else that is really puzzling people at the moment. Some people are getting very, very worried about this, and that is AI. Because they can see here, they're starting to realize that indeed this part of it is very true. Information is creating consciousness. And many, many people are becoming very worried about this here. Now, what I'm going to say is that because AI does not have the spark of the spirit within it, then this consciousness that AI creates is AC. So AI is creating artificial consciousness. It will never actually be alive. Only that which has the spark of whatever you want to call it, whatever you like, whatever you prefer, the spark of the divine, that is what life is. AI will never have that. However, a bit further down the track, I am going to be pointing to what is going to happen in I would say around the year 2035, somewhere around there is going to be a real shock. And it is actually not just going to be a shock to us humans, biological humans. It is even going to shock AI, or by then it will be ASI. It's even going to be a shock to that. And it will say, what the hell is going on here? So I'm going to talk about that down the track. I think that is, that's not until episode 10. So I won't go that far ahead of myself. But definitely AI and ACI and our biological life, all biological life forms have got a purpose. So please, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch up with you with the one that now is going to follow on very, very closely to this one when I change that over, and it will be episode 4, the purpose of life. And so, as usual, please go into my website, which is www.isthehumanraceaboutttomature. That's up there and down here. You'll find extra information, and there's also information there about where I'm going with all of this. I've really only just started, but where am I taking all of this, and what's going to be in the coming episodes. So please go into my website. But of course, as just about every YouTuber has to say, because you know what the algorithms are like, please, if you want to support me, click that button down there, give it at least a like, put some comments in, and subscribe, and please share it, because personally I really do, and I believe this sincerely, this information needs to get out there. We need to change our thinking from where we're at right now into something new. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you in episode 4.